Okay, the third section we're going to go through is expenses you can claim for business. It's something we get asked a lot, not just from Selfinet, from every client that we have. At some point or another, has asked what we can claim as an expense for our business and what we can't. Now, there's two views on this. There's my view as an accountant, and the experience I've built up over 25 years as being an accountant, um, and revenues view, which is clearly slightly narrower than mine. However, revenue and customs have a very clear definition, and expenses you can claim for business is included in law, and it very clearly says that the expenses you can claim for your business must be wholly and exclusively for the purposes of trade. So that very narrowly defines what you can claim. It's got to be wholly and exclusively. It has to be both, not one or the other. So it must be an expense which is for business, and it must be only for business. If you have an expense which is partly business, partly personal, or it is, you must then prorata it. Or if it's a business expense or an expense you put through your business, but it is not wholly for business, excuse me, it has a personal element to it. You must prorata it. Or if it's not exclusively for business, you must prorata things like use of home office. It's not exclusively for business, clearly, um, in the case of a home office, but you can do a prorata, although it's not wholly and exclusively that portion of your costs are for business purposes. So there is a bit of a grey area surrounding that very narrow definition as well. Um, so I think if I had to put it into very simple terms, I think provided that it's plausible, provided that it is genuinely a business expense, and you can provide a reasonable justification to us and to Revenue and Customs as to why something is, or why you believe it's to be a company expense, that's fine. Um, it's up to you as a director of the company under the Companies Act to do good and proper business, and it's up to you to manage the business as best you see fit. Spend money whatever you like. It just doesn't mean that it's necessarily tax deductible. If you want to spend all your money on something, whatever it might be, that's fine. You're perfectly entitled to do that. Just revenue's question would be, well, why should we give you the tax deduction for it? Um, so you need to consider two things: is it a business expense, and is it tax deductible? And this is the quandary that we often end up with. Uh, a meal perfectly legitimately might be a business expense, but can you claim it for tax purposes? And that has a set of rules and a set of circumstances we need to justify before we will allow it as a company expense. So we need to do this on an ongoing basis. But I wanted to give you a bit of an explanation, and I'll tell you my view on expenses. Now, bearing in mind this is not every accountant's view, just my personal view. So we have core expenses, which are sort of at the heart of your expense control. And they are things that you would have irrespective of what or how you ran your business. A business of your kind would have those things anyway. Um, Things you simply can't avoid. So in your case, things like you would need a laptop, you need a phone, you need certain types of software, you need professional indemnity insurance, you need accountants' fees, you need um, to buy stationery occasionally. Those are costs that you're not necessarily going to be able to avoid. A business of your kind, running in the way it does, will have the sort of second sphere of expenses, which are called circumstantial costs. Um, Now, those costs are necessary for you given your circumstances. You may not work from home, in which case you're not entitled to a use of home office allowance. You may not have lots of travel. You may simply work in an office and you don't move anywhere. You can't claim travel costs. But on the other hand, you may work from home quite a lot. You may be on standby. You may be traveling around the country a lot. You may be traveling around Europe. You may be traveling around the world. In which case, travel costs and subsistence costs and daily allowances um, will all be part and parcel of your cost structure. You may have you may be in a particular technology where you're having to spend a lot of money on software. You may be spending a lot of money on consulting fees or assistants who help you with blocks of work. Um, you may be in a particular position of technology, given what you do in mobile technology, where you need to be replacing your technology very often. Where some people, their computer from Windows XP may still be perfectly fine. Not in your case, given the technologies you work in, you need to update your technologies very often. That's a circumstantial cost. So the cost relating to updating all this technology, new laptops, new operating systems, a new phone. You may need the very latest, greatest phone. That's fine. That's circumstantial costs. And provided they are for business purposes and you've got a plausible explanation as to why they are for business purposes, fine. See no reason why you can't claim them. See no reason why you can't claim them as a tax deduction, given some rules and regulations we need to comply with as well. Things like, and then sort of your third sphere around the circumstantial costs are directors' discretionary costs. Now, this is where, if it's going to be anything that you can't deduct for tax, this would be the kind of zone it'll happen in. You as a director can run your company wherever you like. You can spend all the money you like. You can spend all of the money. Revenue can't really stop you from doing that. What they can stop you from doing is, of course, of allowing you the tax deduction from a corporation's tax point of view, or they may say this is a personal cost, the company's paid it for you, therefore you need to payroll it, or you've got to pay benefits in kinds tax. And the typical example is a car. Let's say you have a company car. You decide as a director, I'm going to spend some of the company's money on a car. Perfectly fine. Doesn't necessarily mean the company can claim the deduction for it. And because the company's paying a car, and if it's for personal use, well, then you're going to have to pay benefits in kinds tax. It is still a company expense. You just can't claim the tax deduction. Or in certain cases, you may be limited to the deduction, or you may be entitled to the deduction, but at the same time, you having to pay a rate of personal tax on it at some particular rate, depending on what it is. So these discretionary costs are very broad. It can be any manner of things. You may decide, look, I work on my computer screen all day, every day, and I want a 42-inch plasma screen to work from. And I have lots of little mini windows, as Windows 10 can do, and OS X Capitan can do. You can have lots of windows, and you can look at various screens all at the same time. Perfectly fine. If that's what you need, and you as a director decide that's what you're going to spend your money on, perfectly fine. The challenge comes in some of these cases is it tax deductible or not? And anything that you're not sure of, talk to us. Let's advise you on it before you do anything. And if we'll give you the advice, and if we can claim the tax deduction for it, we certainly will do that for you. The other thing that we need to have a look at in claiming expenses for your business is daily allowances as well. You're very well versed on that, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you've paid money from your business bank account, but it's still an expense you can claim. If you are what we call a migrant worker, if you're out of the office on particular days or particular times, and you're working from a client's premises, or you're doing field work, you're entitled to certain statutory tax deductions. If you're using your personal car or your personal bicycle for traveling for the company's business, you can claim certain deductions, and we've been through that with you. If you need help on that, or you need a refresher, send us an email. Send an email through to your accountant that looks after you, and we'll give you an explanation, or we'll get onto a Skype call and we'll give you an explanation. We'll see your circumstances, and we'll advise you. If you can think of anything that you are spending money on that you think may be business, or you're thinking of spending money on something, or you're going somewhere, give us the heads up. We'll talk it through. We'll give you some advice, and we can tell you whether, first of all, you can expense it, and second of all, whether you can claim it as a deduction. yeah, I think we've covered everything there. Very broad topic. It's not really defined into particular things. It's just an update and a refresher, giving you our view again in case you haven't heard it before. Yeah, if you need anything, let us know.